Happy Wisdom Wednesday, everybody. So today is actually my 1-year anniversary at Potrero Medical, and I want to review a book that was given to us when we first started the company. It's had a great effect on my life, especially not only as a professional, but as a as a husband, as a son. And it's called Extreme Ownership by Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. And Jocko and Leif were Navy SEALs who led a unit over in Iraq, and they learned a lot about leadership, and not only just about leadership, but what makes teams succeed and what causes them to fail. And so I wanted to go through their sections and share with you some of the takeaways that I enjoyed the most. This is definitely not all of them. That's why I recommend you buy the book and buy it for your team and read it along. And so let's go through it. So the 3 sections that I'm going to go through is number 1, victory within yourself, victory in combat, and then sustaining momentum for victory. So the first one is no bad teams, only bad leaders. Now this is an interesting one because it really puts the onus on the leader. Because what does it mean to be a great leader? That it means that you lead a group of people, which means, and that's kind of the premise of this whole book of Extreme Ownership, is that when the team fails, it's upon the leader. When the team succeeds, it's the success of the team, right? And as a leader, this is not something that you speak. We don't really care about what we hear, we care about what we see, and so you do this through your actions. So if you take a great leader, they will find a way to take a bad team and turn it into a good one. Simultaneously, you take a bad leader who feels like they're a torture genius, feels that everybody's stupid, it's always somebody else's fault, it's never on them, they'll take any good team and turn it to a toxic mess. All right. The second thing, manage your ego. Now, as a leader, it's so important to develop that inner confidence, right? To have that clarity when things go awry. But part of that is that as you start developing that confidence, that ego starts to ooze out of you, right? And the thing about the ego is that it's the first thing to start patting you on the back and telling you that you're special, you're one of a kind, nobody is better than you. It's the first thing to turn on you when things go wrong and tell you, you know what? You're never that good, and you never tried hard enough, you didn't train hard enough, etc., etc. It's really important to keep this into check, and a great way to do that is whenever someone who works on your team, who reports to you, comes to tell you something, if you immediately are thinking about the next thing that you're about to say, your ego's getting in the way. If you think that you know what the other person's about to communicate, or you think you have a better idea, you are letting your ego get in the way. Once you remove your ego, you develop this curiosity, and I see this with great leaders who I've had the fortune of working with, that they always have this curiosity, even if it's in a domain that they know much more about than you do. They're curious enough to listen because there might be the off chance that you know some little detail that they don't know, and that can better inform their decision and, more importantly, help the team succeed. So moving from victory from within to victory in combat, right? First thing is keep things simple. Now, this is not to be confused with simplifying things or making things simplistic, rather, right? It's important to keep things simple because if you can't explain something simply, you obviously don't know it well enough. And if you don't keep things simple, a lot of people will sort of lose the message. That's why companies have a very simple mission and vision statement, right? To make sure that everyone is aligned and oriented in the right direction. The other thing is that, especially in the field of battle, you want to keep things simple because your brain doesn't have the capacity to immediately retract and digest very complicated things. So it's important to always try and keep things simple, okay? Be direct, be clear, be simple with the team. Secondly, decentralized command. One of the things that the Army found as an issue maybe over a century ago is that very loyal, dutiful soldiers are great. They listen to orders very well. But what happens if things go awry and they cannot get hold of their commanding officer? They have to make a decision, right? So the idea is you decentralize command so that every person on the team has extreme ownership. More so than that, every person can act as a leader within their own unit, even a leader within themselves. So even within a company, whether you're the VP or the CMO or even an associate, right? You can take ownership and leadership of the certain domain that you have, right? And take real pride in it. For those of you who have a job that you hate, that's okay. If you hate your job, fall in love with the way that you do the job and really own it. That's why you decentralize command. And as a leader, you can trust that every person on your team is taking extreme ownership because they realize that for their domain of knowledge, they're going to make the best decision possible because you've given them that opportunity, you've given them that directive. Now, lastly, and I really love this one, is that the last chapter, it's discipline equals freedom. So why does discipline equal freedom? I'll tell you why. You know, many years ago, I had the fortune of really working with some remarkable individuals, and I paid very close attention to what they did. And what they all did very well was that they were very disciplined. They got up early, they executed, they delivered on their promises, they did not make any excuses. And this all boiled down to discipline. So what does discipline mean? Discipline means that you make a promise that you deliver on, that you make sure to show up, you always ship. And even on the worst days, when there's a valid excuse, you do what you say that you're going to do. You can start by doing this with small things, right? You can just wake up, you make a commitment for the next month and say, every day I'm going to wake up, I'm going to make my bed. It doesn't matter how lousy I feel, I'm going to make my bed. Or you can say that, for example, for me and my wife, we're not having dessert. Only once a month, right? It takes discipline to do that. But the reason why discipline equals freedom is because now you have full ownership, extreme ownership over your own self, over your own domain. And before you start trying to master your environment, you have to start mastering yourself. And I'll end with a fantastic proverb by billionaire Warren Buffett and Charlie Munger, who say this, that the chains of habit are too weak to be felt until one day they're too strong to be broken, which is a very important message, especially for young professionals, because while you're young, you know, teenagers in your early 20s, it's important to start instilling those habits from then, because as you get older, it gets a lot more harder. And just like dead wood that's built up over time in a forest, if you don't burn that dead wood off so that way better things can grow up, right? You don't remove those bad habits, you're going to end up accumulating a lot of debt there, and one day you're going to have to burn down the whole forest. So that's the book of the week. As always, happy Wisdom Wednesday. Go out, get it for your team, and I'll see you next week.